The audience doesn't give a shit.
Anyone else feel like you're seeing a lot of big blue folks on the screen at the minute? Everyone else see Black Panther Wakanda Forever? Alright, let's play a game. I spliced 3 shots from Telecon into this video. Comment below if you can spot them, and I'll shout you out in my next video. Hello, and welcome to Podcast Assemble. My name's Tommy. Let's talk about Avatar: The Way of Water. The long gestating project has been in the oven so long that some believed it had entered the dreaded development hell.
It's been 84 years.
Or some overbaked pie analogy. But the follow-up to James Cameron's 2009 extravaganza is finally upon us, and the internet currently seems divided into 2 camps with regards to Avatar. Those on the side of internet discourse who seem to think the highest grossing movie of all time should be something more than it is, and those who have a more revisionist take, looking back on it more favourably. The original didn't become the highest grossing movie of all time for nothing. It broke barriers visually and in terms of spectacle. It is, though, a film I actually don't have amazing memories of. Not for some artsy, snobby reason at all, no. Mainly because I saw it with probably the worst hangover of my life, and the 3D effects made me want to vomit the whole time. But I get it. It's a real spectacle of filmmaking. However, the sequel has been 13 years in the making. I've got to ask, how do you get excited for it? Join me to discuss why anyone actually cares about Avatar, and if it lends itself to the follow-up been worth your time? Or is the internet apologising for its realisation of the original's averageness? Now, the OG movie follows Sam Worthington's Jake Sully to Pandora from a dying Earth, where Sam's mission sees a military unit attempting to procure the world's natural resources in the form of a precious metal and ludicrously named unobtainium. Sounds kind of satirical. However, when Jake is saved by one of the native Na'vi of the planet, a blue race of humanoid cat-like extraterrestrials who force themselves on wild animals to gain their trust, just don't think about it. Jake falls for a Na'vi, Neytiri, played by Zoe Saldana, and inevitably goes on a journey of understanding and empathetic awakening. Now I get it, I'm of course being somewhat sardonic in my appraisal, but I don't care. Like I say, Avatar 2009 was a technical wonder. My hangover aside, it was an interesting insight into the human condition, and one which reflects the geopolitical climate with which we live through daily. However, the story did leave a lot to be desired. One of the key problems I had with the first Avatar was the length. It came in at a whopping 2 hours and 42 minutes. That's a long time to be wearing ridiculous 3D glasses.
You look ridiculous.
In 2022, we're no stranger to long-ass movies. Directors like Quentin Tarantino go out of their way to make movies as cinema-worthy as possible. And hell, crowds want their money's worth. It's too damn easy to stay at home and watch Anchorman for the 1000th time on streaming.
60% of the time, it works every time.
However, the real issue isn't that it's a long time to sit in the cinema. It's a long time to sit in the cinema to watch a recycled story. Now, movies reusing ideas, it's nothing new. The recent Top Gun Maverick's ending pretty much ripped directly from Star Wars. But in the case of Avatar, the runtime doesn't mask the fact that many of the film's plot points are, well, derivative, with many pointing out the similarities between it and the likes of Disney's classic Pocahontas, or Dances with Wolves, or Fern Gully. You see where I'm going with this? It's a long-ass time to sit through a story we've all seen. The Way of Water clocks in at an astonishing 3 hours and 12 minutes. Don't know about you, but I think I'd need an interval. Or a catheter. In fairness, much of the world building and backstory are covered in the first movie, so the watery ways of Avatar will hopefully cannonball straight back in. Okay, so the story is somewhat familiar. So what? That's totally fine, right? If the characters are bringing something new to the table, right? Right? Well, Avatar 2009 does have some noteworthy characterization. Though there are some inconsistencies in the aforementioned Jake Sully, he does have a tight character arc. Sam Worthington does a good job of portraying a military man who's conflicted when he's confronted by the reality of his mission. This seems to come up a lot in public discourse, but from my perspective, it makes sense for Jake, who story-wise has always associated most closely with the military, is bent to the will of the colonel. And don't think you're getting away scot-free, Colonel Quaritch. We're coming for you later. It does mesh nicely with the anti-military themes of the film. However, outside of a few core characters, and I'm being really generous here, Jake, Neytiri, and possibly Sigourney Weaver's Dr. Augustine, I literally couldn't name another character's arc in the movie, or even barely name another character. Can you? This in contrast to the two main, I suppose, villains of the piece. The key themes, as previously mentioned, are the anti-military narrative alongside capitalism. On the side of capitalism, we have the almost Machiavellian Parker Selfridge, who does his best imitation of Paul Reiser's Burke in Aliens. The portrayal really offers nothing new. Giovanni Ribisi does his best with little development and pretty much expository dialogue. More prominently, I guess, is Stephen Lang's Colonel Quaritch, who is the primary antagonist of the 2009 movie, and the character is a prime example of my issue with the film. He's effectively a forgettable cliche. The formulaic portrayal of the antagonist, typecasting the role as general military bad guy, is quite revealing and highlights the lack of substance and ambition. When he dies at the end of the movie, spoilers, we, the audience, have little to no empathy due to the lack of nuanced writing. This is a concern for Avatar, The Ways of Waterways. Colonel Quaritch will be reprising his role as the main antagonist. I guess the only way is up. Though credit where credit's due, James Cameron is a master of sequels. Terminator 2 is probably in my top 5 movies of all time, so don't put it past him to bring back Quaritch as an avatar and create conflict in such a one-dimensional character. If nothing else, the recent swell of somewhat negative discourse directed to the first Avatar movie has at the very least brought it back into the public consciousness. Any PR's good PR, am I right? As I mentioned, the first Avatar released back in 2009, 13 years ago. In 2009, we were all high off Slumdog Millionaire winning Best Picture at the Oscars, and an equally impressive adaptation of Dragon Ball.
Hang on, who wrote this?
Where were you 13 years ago? I know I'd just finished university and was apparently rolling in after a heavy night out, I guess based off the hangover that followed me into the screening. But 13 years is a long time to wait between movies. Maybe too long. Context of this being that the making of Way of Water was slow for not dissimilar reasons to why the initial movie had been baking since circa 1995. James Cameron has been waiting for the technology to catch up to his vision, and amongst the many feats, the team recreated motion capture to be delivered underwater. And if that's not phenomenal, I don't know what is. Problem with waiting this long is the audience. The same audience that saw this back in the year of Barack Obama's inauguration has moved on. Cinema's moved on. I guess we'll find out if time really is the strongest healer. If nothing else, it certainly makes me curious to see what James Cameron has been cooking up all these years. Am I going to go and see it? Most likely for our podcast Assemble. Check us out on your podcast platform of choice. Am I going to have problems with the length? Almost definitely. Am I going to go with an open mind? You can bet your ponytail I will. Look, art isn't perfect, and that's the point. And if it goes badly, there's a plan to finish after the third movie if the second doesn't hit, so win-win. But what we want to know is, what do you think? Let me know if you've caught all the Black Panther Wakanda Forever clips in the comments below. And if you like what you're hearing, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. We also have that podcast called Podcast Assemble for your regular dose of geeky entertainment. Why not join us? Thanks for popping by, guys. Tally ho!